Hello there, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. James here as ever for today's Advanced Performance Management past exam question from the December 2021 paper, which is all about Frushiko. I'm going to walk and talk you through some analysis that I've just had a look through, as one of my students has just done this question and I've marked it. So JP, if you're watching it, this video is dedicated to you, my friend. So I'm just going to walk and talk you through to benefit other APM students, because this is a past exam question available to you. I'll put the link in the description below. But from September 2022, there are going to be professional skills embedded within the mark scheme that are unfortunately not in the old past papers. So this video is just going to walk and talk you through some of the updates of the professional skills, some exam techniques that I picked up on the question 1. And remember, this is for 50 marks as well, so it's one of the main reasons why students either pass the APM exam or unfortunately fail. If this is the first time you visited my channel, be sure to subscribe, the button be at the bottom. Leave me a comment what you think of this sort of type of video, as I don't sort of do many of them. So if you want more of them, let me know in the comments, and as well, of course, give it a massive like on there. So I'm going to give you just a nice little overview, and you can follow it on the screen, so feel free to have a go at the question beforehand. And these are the requirements that were set for question 1 for Frushiko, and we're looking about writing a report to the Chief Executive Officer. So we had to consider quantitative factors, narrative factors on there, we had gearing, and also there was a quote about what gets measured gets done. So what did I pick up on from the actual mark scheme and going through the actual answers themselves? So first of all, these are the sort of little notes that I've just gone through and marked a paper on it that I thought, oh, it'd be really helpful for any APM student. And the first thing before we actually go into the full bit of the actual answer on here, let me take you down to the mark scheme, first of all, because the examiner will want you to see this, and it could be the difference in you passing. But have a look on here. For questions 1, 2, 3 and 4, notice the external examiner puts on here 1 mark per point for number 1, but must be based on scenario information. So first thing to get down in your notes, and from having a look at papers myself on these style of questions, you've got to apply your points back to the scenario in order to guarantee that 1 mark for it. And for point I on here, we had a maximum of 18 marks on there. So you've got to be really specific, look at the breakdown of all the marks. But again, just to highlight again that for part 2, part 3 must be based on scenario information, and the commentary on here will come on to some of the workings, but again, it's application of figures provided in the exhibits on the CBE platform. The other key thing to pick up on is that it's broken down as to 1 mark per point. So just have a look in your answer, if you're maybe watching this video as a review, that have I given at least, say for example for part 4 down there, I've got to give at least 10 points to have a chance of getting 10 marks. So exam technique wise, bear that in mind, and I'm going to walk and talk you through now how to pick up on the professional marks, as you can see at the bottom for the 4. And then we'll be coming on to the professional skills marks, how they're going to be embedded in this examination from September 2022 onwards on there. So let me just take you back to the full answer, just on some of the key things that I picked up on here, and then I'll link it into that how would this apply to the professional skills. So in these answers, they've actually not got the professional skills included. So you can see it in the title up at the top there. So I'm going to take you through about how we're going to pick up on those marks on there. So the professional skills, as we go through it, have a lovely document that you can see on the screen here. If you haven't read it or have a little flick through, I've put the link in the description of this video. And the key words and terms you'll hear me say in this video, and we'll come back to it later on, so make sure you stay to the end, are all about communication, first key area that you're going to get assessed on, analysis and evaluation. I've highlighted some key words in the answer analysis that are definitely going to help you out. Skepticism for APM, the judgment with the little star on there is referring to advanced audit and assurance. And finally, commercial acumen, all about applying back to the scenario. But I'm going to take you through that in a bit more detail at the end. So coming on to communication first of all, And linking back to the answer, we were asked to actually put it in a report format. So please make sure for your notes, for your APM exam, if you've got a report format, you can see on the side there, who's it to, who is it from, the date, which again, if you have a look back at the actual question requirement, you can see there, it is now the 1st of September 2005, so they've put September 2005 on there, and a little subject as to who the company is, key thing that you need to get into your sort of style for this exam, using the company name and referring back to the specific people mentioned in the scenario. Another key thing the APM external examiner continually mentions. Then you've got the 4 key areas up at the start there, a nice little introduction paragraph, and feel free to read through it yourself. I've put all the links down to where these documents can be found, but it just gives a general overview as to what is going to be analysed in the report and highlighting the 4 key areas. And again, just to highlight this, what gets measured gets done was referred to. The examiner is wanting you to be specific in your arguments and points that you make. So that is where key thing for your exam technique on here. Use the requirements as your headings. So what do I mean by that? For exam technique, you can see here points 1, 2, 3 and 4. And we've got about quantitative and narrative or qualitative on there. So there you go. There's quantitative, your first heading. We'll scroll down. And then as you can see down here, current performance, narrative on there. So that is where use the requirements to shape your report. It makes such a difference. Now, I'm not going to go through all the exhibits. All I've done for you on the screen now, so you can get it down in your notes, and it links into that mark scheme as to what are the key points to highlight for each particular area. Because when you read through the exhibits, there are going to be strengths and weaknesses that you have to highlight. And as you can see on here, linking it back to the retail sector, and then being really specific to what they mentioned in the scenario. So in this case, it was about the customer experience, the actual appearance of the shops, or the range of clothes, and the selling and enthusiasm of the working team. And these are the areas that you need to be discussing and linking into, which comes back to the professional skills on here for your analysis and evaluation. So the communication is how you've laid out your work. Are all your points actually articulated correctly, referring back to the company's name, and also explaining your points relating back to the scenario. Because coming on to the analysis now, and this is where the detail comes into it. You can see on the side there, specific versus general. The points here highlighted in yellow are where the examiner has highlighted some real specific knowledge on here that you have to pick up on from an APM perspective. And this is where, coming back to those professional skills, the analysis and evaluation comes into it. The commercial acumen we'll have a look at as well is all about the type of business, application on there. But have a look on here as to when we're looking at measuring the business objectives, stating to the market if something has not been fully measured. Is it a primary function? Is it secondary on there? Did it meet the satisfactory levels on as well? What are the indicators that they highlighted in the exhibits? And the customer experience should be measured through and identify financial indicators on there. Is there anything omitted from the reports that was completely missed out altogether? And then question how to say, well, this is how we are currently measuring it. Well, how should it be measured as well? That is where you're going to add value into your piece with the analysis on top of it. Now, for question 1, you're actually going to have at least 10 professional marks within question 1 because it's 50 marks overall, half the paper. There are 20 professional marks in APM, so half of them at least are going to be allocated in question 1. The other area where they're going to be all sort of embedded throughout, as you can see on here, are just some little key points is where you can start to develop the next professional skill of analysis and evaluation. This is where the external examiner continually mentions in their reports that students make their point, but then don't explain why or give an analysis on it. And if you can use some of these little terms in your answers, it's going to take it that little notch up and really go into a lot more detail. So as you can see on here that we've take point 1 for example on here. So the report only reports on absolute sales and does not reflect the purchase of the new store. Okay, brilliant. You've referred to the scenario, you've made a point. This is where we start to make sure we nail that first mark and be pushing it into getting more, because this distorts as a result. Therefore, however, it's all about the reason and then justifying it to say, well, what does this lead to? And in the point of number 1 on there, unclear about the growth, referring to the specifics of the actual financial statement. So in this case, it was all about the revenue and the operating profit, so profit and loss account. And you could have made some other points as to, would it affect the statement of financial position on there? And it all links into, well, we got not much of clarity on it. It reflected on how we categorize performance into existing and new stores. So notice again, application, showing analysis, and evaluating the point. That is where the professional skill mark would be given and awarded to the student on there. But note down those little key points that will help you to make your reasons and justify them as well. A couple more on the screen that the board might want to consider. So recommendations on there, and a couple of howevers that you've got to see and have balanced arguments. So again, this is where you'd have your communication professional skills marks, that you've got to be pragmatic in how you answer the question, how it is articulated to the marker. I always get questions about spelling, or what if I get things mixed up? Well, first of all, the CBE format doesn't have spell check. And from going to a few of the APM webinars, the ACCA are more concerned about how you communicate your points to the marker rather than your spelling on there. So don't get too bogged down if you misspell something or anything on those lines. If you're trying to make the correct point, you'll be given credit for it. Now, next exam tip, coming on to point 2, where we had to look at narrative or qualitative areas. And this is so key for your APM exam, and have a look back at the exhibits. But the marker is trying to highlight for you on here using specific figures applied from the scenario, and also referring to the targets that were set in place as to, did we actually reach the target? Are we above it? And then referring to, again, we've got little percentages on there, but they also explain, are these percentages good or bad for the business as a result? So you always have in the tutor's notes that there are a variety of different points, but the bottom line is that the exam technique is still the same. Application of the figures from the scenario and then backing it up with a discussion. But can you see here with the tutor note? I'll just highlight it for you, but others might discuss. So they've got to discuss. You've got to go into more detail, and that is where the communication marks will come into it. Moving swiftly on, part 3 on here, so gearing and cost structures. Now I should have written a note on the side, but I'll explain it to you to help you out. Is notice in the first paragraph, it's just setting the foundations there, that you understand what gearing and the cost structures actually are in context from your APM knowledge. So demonstrating it, getting those first few marks in the bank. And also notice it's in a nice, short and sweet little paragraph before we get into any calculations. So you're going to get some communication marks there, assuming you've related it to the actual company. Funchi on here. Sorry if I've mispronounced that as well. But it's all about get those easy marks first of all, then we go into the application of the figures. But notice at the bottom on here, I've highlighted it, is that, okay, take those figures, use the specific amounts on there, but the highlighted bits on the side, whichever side is from the recording of the webinar, is is in these calculations. This means the results of these calculations are. This is where you're going to be pushing for the top marks in your APM exam. Coming on to now, part 4, as we had, again, what gets measured gets done. Use the requirement to shape your answer. But notice on here, we had to actually make a really good valid point to get at least 1 mark. And what we're saying there is, again, we need to apply it to the scenario, pick up on a point on there. So we had, let's have a look at, say, tunnel vision. So tunnel vision is present within the quote as it refers to an undue attention on the aspects of performance on there. Okay, so really good statement. Then we have little phrases on here like, for example, this might lead to. And in this case, it was the focus on the revenue, the dividend payment commentary may lead to a lack of, and then this is where the risk comes into it, the lack of attention to profit margins. So just going into that little bit of detail is going to make such a difference into how many marks you're going to get allocated for question 1 for the actual content on there and also for the professional skills. Other keywords to note down finally on there, we had the focus was on, as we touched on, there is a lack of, this would occur if, this implies that, and finally, however the quote is intended to. So again, looking at different sides of the actual scenario, a balanced argument, and linking it back to what the question was asking for about the statement on there. So make the point, and then justify, is it good or bad? And this will lead you to your acumen marks and your communication marks for how this is portrayed to the marker. So just going into a bit more detail, and this document will really help you as to break down the communication, the analysis, and the skepticism and commercial acumen, is if I put this on the screen on here for you. And again, if you want to take a screenshot of it, whatever it may be. Communication, how we inform, persuade, and clarify and simplify our point. So I think we've touched on that in this video as to stating our actual knowledge of what the requirement is asking for, the layout in the report format, that all comes into it on there. Skepticism, because in this actual video I didn't go into the requirement, it's all about questioning, and this is a real key thing for you to get down, question any variables or statements made within the actual exhibits that you go, how can that be true? Why is that possible? How have they done that? Why has the CEO and directors decided to make that? And keywords on there, challenge and critically assess. You'll be given marks for picking up on things in the scenario where there is variability, where there are things that could go wrong on there, and then relate it into the requirements. We've got the analysis and evaluation, so considering, assessing, appraising, investigating. So definitely have a look back on part 3 and part 4, how we took the point and then we made the balanced argument to say, is this a positive, is this a negative on there? And commercial acumen, demonstrating awareness, so the type of business that we're actually dealing with here, key issues, so we looked at the actual indicators, the performance on there, and then finally showing insight to say, well, have I looked at this strategically, long term? Have I looked at it operationally, the day-to-day aspects of the business? Judgments in how we've actually linked that to the requirement. So consider the hierarchy. Do we have the board of directors involved, the actual committees, what stakeholders? Are we actually having to apply any theory or any judgment? What sort of variables have we been given? This is all about, again, if there was one word to take away from this video, it's all application, application, application to the scenario on there. And if you do that, in my eyes, you've got a very, very good chance of picking up on these professional skills that are going to be embedded into your APM exam. And this is where you're going to get, for a 50-mark question, that minimum 25 overall for that part of the exam that is going to help you to get you on the way to passing on there. And that takes you through a nice little overview for the question on here for APM for Frucci for on you there. So I hope that helps. Good luck with the exam, JP, and you've definitely helped out some other APM students to get me to do this video. If you have enjoyed it and you found it helpful, give it a like down below. Make sure you subscribe as ever, guys, and let me know in the comments how you're getting on with your revision, and if you want some more sort of videos, a bit like this, a bit less formal, and just to help you out, really. So best of luck with your APM exam and the new professional skills that are going to get embedded. All the links for today's videos are below. And I've left you a couple of videos at the end of this linking to APM and study skills. If you click one of them, they're definitely going to help you out as well. And it could be the difference in you just getting that 50 plus that's going to get you over the line. And who knows, the APM exam may be your last exam and on to being fully qualified ACCA. But as ever on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. Cheers.